Charlie,
Hey, friend.
hello.
Hi.
We're back again. We made it to episode 2.
Still not fired. Fantastic.
Yeah, I know. We haven't been fired. We haven't been doxxed. You know, things are great. Today, I have a very special guest, which is these little stretchy finger rings that I was prescribed because I am getting carpal tunnel syndrome because I spend too much time on the internet. So I was prescribed. I have to do like little exercises on these.
Oh,
and, like,
that's dark.
expand my fingers and like scrunch it up. It's really bad. My ergonomics. Oh, I also got a little twitch or a little fidget cube, which is very fun.
Is that just like to clear the lactic acid out of your fingers? What's happening?
Yes. I mean, listen, athletes have to train. So do professional posters.
Are you blogging at elevation now from a hyperbaric chamber?
I have my modem has a parachute behind it. It is so good to be back with you. It looks beautiful where you are.
It's pretty nice. I mean, you can't really see out the window because it's so sunny, but it is. It's nice. It's not. Is it apocalyptic where you are? Is it fire again?
No, it's fine. We can breathe the air again.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, things are pretty good. We have a lot to talk about today. It's a crazy day. I'm going to show you. I'm going to pull up our agenda here.
I love it.
Okay, first on the agenda is Charlie's meme stash. So why don't you? I think you have something to show me.
This is lovely. It's not really a meme per se, but it's a great little piece of technology, ephemera that I think you'll appreciate. Okay, this is the. Let's go. Let's share my screen if we can. It is from the Palantir Investor Day webcast.
Oh boy.
I'm just going to
Palantir being the, what would we call Palantir?
Sort of like the Silicon Valley, like intelligence surveillance company with Peter Thiel as an investor involved in lots of like shady defense stuff and like contracts with ICE, etc. And just like overall, like it's very unclear whether or not they're
okay. So this is from their. So Investor Day is like they talk to investors, like they're going public.
Yeah, this is like part of the whole like show us your about, lift up the the kimono, so to speak. And this is like how it begins. So the only part that's important in this is very long. This is 2 hours long. We're going to show.
We're not going to watch that.
We're going to show the first minute of this because it is just inscrutable and wonderful. So I'm just going to play it for you. I'm so glad you haven't seen this. This is lovely.
Oh, I can't hear your sound. Is there sound?
Oh no!
There you have sound. You have to unshare and reshare your screen.
Yeah. Sorry, technical difficulties.
No worries.
Love it. So fun. Palantir Day. Where are you, buddy? Okay. All right, we're back.
All right, we're back.
This should work. Can you hear it? So it looks kind of fancy.
Got our disclaimers, okay.
And then
what is that? What are those? What are those?
Welcome to Palantir's Investor Day. We're very happy and proud to have you here. Many of you know us for our work in the intel and defense space. Some of you know us for powering some of the largest institutions in the world.
Why is he wearing racquetball goggles?
And what's interesting about what we're showing you today is that you're going to get to take a look at our financial history. And one of the things that I think people have already noticed is that the revenue has grown dramatically, that the
What
quality of the
even is
revenue
this?
That's the first thing that you're
Activity.
noticing. The
in
first
my
thing you're
view,
noticing is that the
astonishing.
revenue has
And then
grown
the
dramatically.
combination of
Okay, that's it. That's all. From there, it's like another 2 minutes of him.
Is that a rich guy's sport that I have never encountered?
So, as a relatively new resident to the Mountain West, this is cross country skiing, like a dry cross country skiing. Is essentially what he's doing. So,
I
This is
legitimately did not even know that was a thing.
well, it's like what you do when you really care about cross country skiing and you want to get better at it.
But it's
you
not
know,
snowing.
It's not snowing. I mean, like, but the whole
It's so
part
good.
where he's just running like way the hell uphill. Like, it's just such a ridiculous thing.
I love it. It's
It
like
just
it's
starts-
very do you remember that like 10-year-old video where like the guy was applying for jobs on Wall Street and he was just like crushing weights in the weight room as his like video resume?
That's a little bit. I mean, there's a similar energy to this, but
It has very like dad, like jacked dad energy.
But what's so weird about this is like there's never any mention of why this is happening. There's never any explanation. It's not like really tied to. It's not like this is like REI's Investor Day or like that. You know, the only explanation I got was from our colleague Kate Conger that like I guess he moved to Colorado recently, and so that's the reason.
But
Anyway.
he never even like made an allusion like we're gonna climb mountains for our investors, just like I'm climbing this mountain. Like
I mean, there's nothing there that I saw in the first 2 minutes of the video. I mean,
so good.
And he's got the glasses on, which, like, I mean, let's be real here. Like, you can get some real speed going downhill potentially, but like, I don't know
no
that
shame
you
in
need-
eye protection for sure.
I don't know that you need the eye protection at the speed that he's
Wow.
going in there.
Wow.
And it's just an odd thing. Like the flailing uphill thing is just like you kind of want to like lead with strength. And
Yes.
I just feel like that is not like just one more time.
It's so good.
It's just and he like chooses to take the helmet
welcome to
off
Palantir's Investor Day.
because why?
We're very
Oh, I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, it's nice to be able to laugh at it because in the meantime they're just like surveilling U.S. citizens and
Yeah.
like undocumented citizens, immigrants at the border, and it's just it's kind of garbage. But we will always have
very happy and proud
this
to have you here.
image right here.
I love it. That's so good. I need to get some dry skis. All right, Charlie. What else do you have for me from your meme stash?
We've got a lot going on here. So I want to end with what I do. You want it now or do you want it later? Is the question, because it's just a straight up meme. It has nothing to do with politics.
No, I want it now.
Okay.
I need a meme, and it's been a dark day. I need a meme.
All right. I'm gonna re-share you on a great extra thing here, which you will appreciate. This is actually a bit old. Well, it's very old, but it surfaced in 2015, but it surfaced again today, and I just love it. It's a 1991 Sizzler commercial,
Okay,
and I'm
ready.
just gonna play it for you.
No sound.
God damn it! Sorry.
Foiled again.
It's a real bummer too because it's very loud on my end. One moment. I'll get it for you. Now, what I love about this is it was being shared in the spirit of campaign ads that have been around, and that this is actually arguably better than any campaign ad that any candidate has put out to date. So here we go. Hopefully you can hear this. Come on, buddy. There it is.
All across America, the song of freedom rings.
Oh, this slaps.
Song is growing stronger every day. It tells us when we listen.
Look at that seabird captain. He's just like creeping on the child.
Let us lift our voices. We can make the choices. We will make the most of all.
It's just like straight American, right?
So here comes the chorus.
Since the one brings us choices, reaching out across the USA.
I regret to inform you that this is 4 minutes and 41 seconds long.
I can't take it. I can't take it.
No. But it's like, it's just the weirdest possible thing for like mid-priced buffet restaurant.
I love it. I love
and
it.
it is this still. This is the still from the video. That's to show you how delectable the buffet is. But anyhow, it is being shared today because this is arguably better than any campaign ad that they put out together. It is more hopeful about the state of the country. It is more uniting. It has more to do with our principles and our values than either Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And I think we can all come together around.
There's not a red America or a blue America. There is a Sizzler America.
Yeah, it's reaching out across the USA.
Okay, what's next on our agenda? Okay, we have to get to the
Yes.
horse mafia because I want to show you something that I have been meaning to do for a long time, which is to pay tribute to my favorite Facebook page, which is called The Horse Mafia. I spend a lot of time on CrowdTangle, as you may know. CrowdTangle obviously is the Facebook data platform. It's very, very useful. And it also has taught me about the prevalence of like boomer memes, like just straight like content for your aunt. And I love it. It turns up like almost every day in some search that I do. And I just think, you know, the horse mafia, it's spreading positivity in a sea of negativity. To be rich is not what you have in your bank account, but what you have in your heart. Amen. Blessed
Wow.
on Thankful Thursday. We got some remembering 9/11. We got some simple rule in life. If you wouldn't like it done to you, don't do it to others.
I can't see your screen, by the way, so you got to show me your screen here.
Oh, shit. All right, let me share again.
So how did you? First of all, while you're doing this, just walk me through. Like, what does the Kevin CrowdTangle morning look like? Like people assume that you are someone who's just like all up in Facebook, sort of like as close as you can. You have sort of like the all seeing eye of, you know, the content out there. Look, what's going on, and how'd you stumble on it?
So every day on CrowdTangle, I use this search box to look for the most engaged post of the day. So like over here, you know, you can see if we go like last 24 hours, you know, that's just the horse mafia, but we'll get to them in a second. So like if you wanted to see the most engaged posts in the United States of America in the last 24 hours from Facebook pages, which is the search that I do every day or almost every day. You would do this post. It would, sometimes it's a little slow, but it will give you the top posts of the day. And usually, so today we've got like Blackpink, which is the K-pop artist. We've got a Truckers for Trump thing, Dan Bongino, someone named Carol G, Humans of New York. So that's the normal search, right? But then like sometimes in the course of doing these searches, I'll come across a page that is just bafflingly popular. Like it has millions and millions of followers, and like everything it posts gets shared hundreds of thousands of times for like no like reason that I can understand.
Right.
And the Horse Mafia is one of these pages. It's just like always at the top of the list, like always getting out there, like 130,000 shares on this Peanuts meme, 112,000 shares on this meme. Like they are reaching like a soccer stadium's full of people, many soccer stadiums full of people with like everything they post. And it's just the purest, most earnest grandma content that I know of. And I just love it. I love it. Being a grandma doesn't make me old. It makes me blessed. It makes me happy every time I see it. So thank you, Horse Mafia, whoever you are. You have brightened my dark searches through the morass of Facebook.
They're just Hallmark cards, honestly. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's like it's like what I love it. It's like what I get from my grandma.
Totally.
From everything, with a very moderately crisp bill, just, right in there.
Totally.
Like, that's what that is.
And the aesthetic is great too. Like, it's not trying to be something it's not. They're not not doing animations. They're not doing, stop motion graphics. They're just out here being the Horse Mafia for the moms and grandmas.
The question is, have you ever seen anything like super dark burbling up in there? Because like I feel like the cynic in me is that there's there's going to be like 600 of those, and then one that's just like, like Hillary Clinton drinks the blood of babies, and just like with like the children and the pot of gold and the little duck, but there's just like one of those every 650 or something, and that they're just slowly gonna get darker.
God. I would lose my shit if the Horse Mafia turns out to be Russian intelligence or QAnon. It's gonna shake me to my core. I'm not sure I could recover from that. Like, I need this to be pure.
My guess is we have under 100 days before the first Save the Children Horse Mafia meme. That's just...
Oh, God, that would break me. All right, so we're going to continue on. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening at Coinbase. So, Charlie, can you just explain, like, what is happening at Coinbase?
Sure. So, essentially...
So, Coinbase, we should say, like, cryptocurrency company. They were like one of the original like places you can buy and sell Bitcoin, and now they're like a big sort of clearinghouse for like cryptocurrency traders.
They made it really easy is what they did. Like, you didn't have to sort of like go in and do a whole bunch of like annoying exchanges to buy your crypto. You could just kind of like hook it up to, a bank account or use a card and just buy it, and then you had it and you tracked it for you. It was like very easy to sort of get in there and even do some of like the alternative cryptocurrencies. Like, it was a way that during sort of like the Bitcoin boom, I wanted to like put a tiny bit of skin in the game. That's right. I'm invested. And it was super easy. So that's like the genesis in there. And yeah. So anyway, it's a rough time in the world. A lot of people are going through a lot of stuff. There've been some pressure at Coinbase from some employees. I believe there's been a walkout. It's a rough time, and everyone wants companies to take a stand. And so the CEO of Coinbase decided to write, an open letter, a medium letter, their intentions. He drew very sort of strongly from the Michael Jordan documentary that came out this summer, and the laser-focused championship mentality. And it's about how to build a championship team. And it's basically saying to all of the Coinbase employees, shut up and dribble and leave politics completely out of it. That it's an unprecedented time. Like, even invokes Breonna Taylor's decision, like the news that came out last week, and about how difficult things are, and then basically says we would like you to ignore it, all of it.
Right.
And
we don't engage here when issues are unrelated to our core mission, because we believe impact only comes with focus. I mean, I feel like I'm having the experience here of like realizing that everyone else who like watched the Last Dance came away with like a much different impression than I did. Like, I came away from that documentary feeling like I would never want to be Michael Jordan. That sounds awful. And I think everyone else was like watching that as sort of a how-to, and especially Brian Armstrong.
Not just like a how-to. Like, not just like a how-to, like, it was specifically picking up on Michael Jordan's asshole personality, in which it was like, here's a man so driven by perfection and success that he is miserable, alienates everyone around him, like bullies, and it was all in service of being the best. And there was like, I don't know, if you watch that documentary, there's a lot of sort of like caution. It's like Michael Jordan as a celebration, but also a cautionary tale. And these guys chose only to deal with like taking the cautionary tale part and blowing it into a celebration. It's ridiculous. It's like exactly what you would think that a bunch of, bloodthirsty investors would do.
Right. I mean, I think so I used to cover Wall Street, and like, one thing that I liked about Wall Street was that nobody there like had any illusions about what they were doing. Like, no one went around saying like, we're saving the world, like we are doing, making the world a better place. They were like, we are providing liquid capital markets. We are, doing the things that undergird the financial system, and like our job is to make money for our shareholders, and that's what we do. And I feel like I've always wanted to write a piece that's just like called like, tech companies are just companies. Like, there are lots of companies that take this exact Coinbase view of the world. They're just not in tech,
Right.
like no like metals manufacturing company is like, we are making the world a better place. They're like, we are creating value for our shareholders, and that's fine. It's striking that he felt the need to like say this, and I wonder what it's going to do to sort of recruiting and retention.
But he comes out too in the thing and says like, hey, like we exist, we're a for-profit company. We exist to make money. Like, we're a freaking like bank, like truly, like,
which is true.
So like, there's this like kind of like bloodthirsty, like ruthless nature about it, right? Like, that's what we're supposed to do. We need to be proud of that. We're not going to try to whatever. And then it like merges that with that stupid mindset of like, like you exist like to be a part of, our championship ecosystem. It's trying to do two things at once is why it
right.
Really
it's
pisses
saying like
me off.
we're a mission driven company, but not that mission. Like,
Yes.
just say like, we're like, our mission is like every other for-profit company, and like that. I don't know. To me, that's what got me about that one. It's just like, it's fine if you want to say like, our company is not a social justice organization and we're just going to make a lot of money, but then just say that, like, you know what I mean?
Right. No, there was a great tweet from Can Durek, who is like
John.
Uber Con. I don't know.
John.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah, it's
Did you say it?
I know. Yeah.
I'm an idiot.
It's crazy.
Apologies.
No,
all
it's
apologies.
crazy.
No, all apologies.
He's very smart.
Incredibly smart. Writes the co-writer of the Margins
So
newsletter, which you should all
in other words, starting a company like Coinbase itself is a political act in itself. Telling people Coinbase is free of politics feels to more like Coinbase's politics is very singular and it's all about Coinbase, which is fine. But I think that's supposed to be but that's not what he says.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's like the whole nature of, the crypto world is like this active rebellion against, a centralized, against like authority, essentially, right? And I think that it's hilarious that they're basically just trying to say, no, at the end of the day, we're just here to, make some money just like everyone else, and you just got to deal with it. I don't know. It really bothers me. Like, I feel like there's this, like, there's just a very classic mentality here that I've been thinking about a lot with like regard like working from home and like what offices do to people and like how oppressive, certain like the corporate relationship to work is. And it really feels like this is such a great example. It's like you are a multifaceted person with interests and biases and all sorts of whatever. But when you come to work, you are an automaton. You work for us. Like, you exist to make us, to make us money, to fit the end worldview, and everything else, like, check out all your baggage at the door. And I just think it's like, it's a relatively, ridiculous statement, especially right now. And this idea that there's like, that being like you can be apolitical now. Like I don't know. I find like everything is politics. Right?
Totally.
At
Totally.
this moment.
Speaking of which,
so-
we have a debate tonight. It's the first presidential debate starting in about 2 hours and change. And we have a very special guest to join us to discuss misinformation, disinformation ahead of the debate and what the hell's going on with Project Veritas and all this other stuff. So please welcome to the stream, Alex Stamos. Hey, Alex.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey,
Good.
Thanks for being here.
Quick intro.
I haven't heard anything. I just wanted to say I love Michael Jordan and I want to be Michael Jordan. I
That's
feel
good.
like I want to be
Good.
a broken down, sad man sitting in my beautiful Florida house by myself. That's my goal.
There seems to be no downside to being Michael Jordan.
No, I took away. I'm like, that sounds great. Yeah.
So Alex is the former CSO of Facebook and Yahoo and a bunch of other places, a longtime security executive, and now at Stanford, where you are doing the Internet Observatory there. And you graciously agreed to come on our Twitch stream. I get why you want access to our millions of viewers. So it's a really it's a self-interested move on your part, but we're really grateful that you took the time. So I
enjoyed your conversation with Casey. I thought it was really cool.
I love your dad pillow back there.
Yeah, I told you. My kids got me that for Father's Day, and now I'm basically required to get it on CNBC. That's like.
That's so good. So good. And you're also a gamer, right? So we should do like the next time we do this, we should do like a Fortnite thing or
What do you-
I don't know
What
what
do you play?
Fortnite is, but these days, I mean, so I play a lot of strategy games because I'm old, but like for shooting, I still play some CS. So I was playing CS Beta 4 when you guys were in junior high. So I'd be happy to take you on that. I'm playing some Crusader Kings just came out. That's actually pretty cool. But maybe we can do or PUBG. I don't know if you guys play that at all.
I'm an Overwatch guy, but I've heard
Overwatch. Oh, I enjoy Overwatch. Yeah, I enjoy Overwatch.
Yeah, I bet you could take me in that too.
No, definitely not. No, like it's amazing, like how bad I played a shooter against my 13-year-old, and he toasted me so bad. It's just like you don't realize like how much delay has been inserted between your eyes and your brain. There's like some kind of latency counter that just goes up once you hit 35, and it just gets worse.
Well, that's the thing with like esports players too. Don't they age out when they're like 18? It's like It's like being a gymnast or something. Like you're done when you're 20.
Except the great ones like Michael Jordan, who keep on coming back over and over again.
Exactly. So, Alex, I want to talk to you about a couple things. One of which is just the day that we've had on the internet today. It's been particularly crazy. I've been following this Biden earpiece thing, this rumor that won't go away. It comes up literally every presidential debate cycle. There's like a rumor that someone's wearing an earpiece and getting like answers piped to them from some shadowy force off stage. But there have been a bunch of other things happening today. So why don't you just like tell us what you're watching today as we approach the first debate?
So we are the Stanford Internet Observatory, which is the thing I run, is part of this partnership called the Election Integrity Partnership with the University of Washington, DFR Lab, and Graphica. And so we're really focused on election-related disinformation. So there's the whole political disinformation sphere, and it feels like you're just putting your fingers in the dam, and there will always be other leaks. And so we tried to pick off a part that we could really focus on. And so we're thinking a lot about people either trying to confuse folks in the function of how they functionally vote, or especially this year in trying to prime. I mean, it's pretty clear there's some massive domestic campaigns, perhaps with some foreign components, but mostly domestic, to prime a huge chunk of the populace into thinking the election's been stolen. And so we've been doing a huge amount of work around that. The big news over the weekend was the Project Veritas stuff. We just released a blog post about this, about it's pretty clear coordination between Veritas and the Trump campaign. If you look at the timing and the fact that Don Jr. had his own version of the video that he re-uploaded, we did some metadata analysis of the videos and such.
Yeah, can you walk us through that? Just like what you found, just kind of, and also like how you guys decided to like focus in on that and when you first noticed it.
Yeah, so I'll take that just to do it in time. I mean, we decided to focus on the election stuff because I was lucky enough to send 4 students to DC. Well, to DC. We're supposed to send 4 students to go work at DHS, right? And the whole plan was these were interns that were all on our team who were going to intern for the part of DHS that's working on election security. So it's called the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. And so we were going to rent a house in Alexandria. They're all going to live together. I was going to drop by and be like the cool older brother. It was going to be a whole thing. It was going to be great. And that all fell apart with COVID, but they still interned, which effectively means they got government badges and laptops shipped to their parents' houses and are working from all over the country. And so our students get there in the kind of late spring, early summer, and they start engaging on some of these. And one of the things that they're told is that effectively, there's a lot of work going on direct attacks against election infrastructure, right? Like actual hacking of e-poll books, voting machines, tabulation machines, that whole thing. And that is being coordinated through a thing called the EI-ISAC, the Election Integrity ISAC, right? And that's all going great and fine. But that, based upon a number of internal decisions at DHS and some legal issues, the disinformation side of that was not something that EI-ISAC could work on directly. That effectively, that DHS employees, people getting federal grants, are not allowed to work on disinformation unless they know it's foreign. As you guys know, that's not how this disinformation works, right? You see a tweet telling people not to vote for whatever reason. Maybe you find out a month later that it was foreign, but like in the moment you don't. And so you can't make that a predicate for operating. And so our students, basically working together with them, we figured, okay, well, we can build some of the functionality, the coordination capability that's happening for hacking, and we can do it outside the government without government money. We work with the EI-ISAC, we work with DHS, but we're also plugged into a bunch of states directly. We're plugged into Common Cause and ADL and NAACP and a bunch of civil rights organizations that do election monitoring. We're plugged into a bunch of different media outlets, including your employer. And we take tips. We do a bunch of work. Behind me is the Jira dashboard that's now on my wall all day. So I was able to get into academia and still find a way to be on call all the time. And we go and investigate that stuff, and then we report to the platforms if we believe it's a violation. And then if it's interesting enough or big enough, we do a write-up. Otherwise, we're kind of archiving all this data, and those 4 organizations will do a big report afterwards. But kind of the idea was, instead of all of us writing something 3 months after the election of this is why it sucks so much, then maybe we, try to stop things in real time, and then we can still write the reports later. And so that's what we've been doing, and we've been operating for 3 weeks. It's been total madness, as you can imagine, and it's been really interesting. Like, we've focused first on what are the policies of the platforms, and we've done a bunch of comparisons of those, and that's actually been super effective. In that since we've posted those, they've changed a bunch of their policies, which is cool. You gonna say something, Charlie? Sorry.
Oh, no. I was saying I saw that grid, and it's like, honestly, it's infuriating that nothing like that had been done before. It's like that there's no place you can go other than what you guys created to actually know where the standards are across the line. So no, but
yeah, because it's not just like the official community standards. Like in Facebook's case, it's the community standards plus a press release plus several official blog posts plus a tweet from Andy Stone in the DC office, right? And so yeah, there's and that's effectively true for all the companies. Like some of the companies, it's easy to find it because they just don't have a standard. And then for the ones that have complex standards, they're not put it into one place. It's smushed all over the place. So
right, and they're making it all up as they go along.
Yeah, they're totally making it. Which is a huge problem here because there's a trade-off here. Like that you always whenever you write community rules, you always want the flexibility to react, right? But there's something different here in that every decision they make is going to be massively politically fraught, right? And so leaving themselves wiggle room is only bad for them, and it's only bad for us because it means every decision is going to become a work the ref situation. And so unless they get to a situation where this is how they're going to act, then we don't have any, they don't have any credibility when they make the decision. So I think it's actually stupid on their side. And so anyway, we've been pushing for that, and the pushing's been pretty effective. Like 3 or 4 companies have massively changed their rules, and there's one prominent company that's going to be coming out any day now based upon our stuff.
Can I ask one question on this?
Of course.
So I was really surprised, or not surprised, kind of infuriated last week. Nick Clegg of Facebook gave an interview to the Financial Times and basically said, we are going to use some break glass in case of emergency scenarios, but we're not going to tell you what they are.
Right.
And I'm just curious of where you fall on that. To me, that infuriates me because it leaves them all this kind of wiggle room, and it sounds more just like public relations posturing than actually, like assuaging the public. Then there's obviously the other idea, the other side of like, you don't want to give away your game plan to bad actors and sort of give them the roadmap. I kind of think that that's bullshit, but I'm just sort of, where do you come down on that? So
it's not bullshit in other scenarios, right? Like exactly writing down what your rules are for spam is a really bad idea because spammers, there's a gazillion of them, they're financially motivated, and they're very good at finding the corner cases of the rules, right? But for political speech, it's one, we're in this crazy place where the companies are creating speech regulation that doesn't exist in the United States and probably will never exist in the United States. And honestly, doesn't even exist in places that don't have a First Amendment, right? Like, famously, Clegg went to the European Parliament and gave a speech at the European Parliament in which he told the European Parliament the rules under which they would be able to advertise during their own elections, right? And it's because the European Parliament decided not to take up legislation to write those rules, right? And so these companies are like acting in a quasi-governmental manner. And if you're going to do that on political speech, I feel like you have to be specific, you have to be crisp, and then draw the line and stick to it. And that means you two and the other New York Times folks will be pissed in some cases. It means that the Trump campaign is going to be pissed. But you can't I just don't think it's fair or smart to go back and forth, and to constantly turn this dial up and down in the middle of what's supposed to be a democratic debate, right? And I do think, I thought that Clegg thing was really crazy too, in that I don't understand what they think. It almost reinserts themselves into the position of, if there was just a fair set of rules and they stuck to them, then in some ways the company would be able to maybe disappear in the background. I mean, obviously they're always going to be blamed for something, but at least people can complain and move on. If you create a situation where you're like, well, if you yell at us enough, then we'll change our mind, which is effectively what they're saying, then what are people going to do? Like, what are the rational actors going to do, right? And so now you have letters from both the Biden and Trump campaign. You have media outlets from both sides screaming at them. And so the more they do this Hamlet thing, I think it just makes it worse. And I don't think it's good for democracy.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I had someone at one of the platforms tell me that basically this was, they were not saying this for attribution, but they basically said the best result for us would be a blowout in either direction, such that the result, nobody could blame us for the result. So they're thinking we want, a 6-point victory for anyone. They don't care, just anything outside the margin of error where they could plausibly be blamed for something. And I thought that was sort of honest and really telling. And that's my sense of what they're hoping for on election night.
But here's the frustrating.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kira.
Oh, I was just going to say the frustrating thing is with that, they're doing two things at once, where they're saying we don't want to be held on the hook for this, but also they know that they're one node in a larger system. And to me, it just feels like the fact that Donald Trump can go out there on the podium in the press room and say what he wants to say about not accepting the results of the election and throw, everyone into a state of, panic about it. He doesn't need Facebook for that. He doesn't need Twitter for that. So, and the platforms know this. So I don't understand why there isn't more of a wanting to step up on this, because it's when it comes to political speech from influential people, just set the rules. They know they're not going to be the decider. I don't know. It's frustrating.
Well, I think it's absolutely, this cycle, the elite disinformation problems are a big problem. So this is the thing we just wrote about Project Veritas, right? Is the Project Veritas video, nobody should say it went viral, right? If you say something went viral, that means that people saw it and they said, oh, I want to share this. And it was an organic thing. That was pushed to, we need a new term. That was kind of artificially pushed to be viral.
Yeah, let's bring this up because I think it's really interesting what you guys found. Can you just walk us through your findings here a little bit?
Yeah, so for folks who want to see the high-res version, it's eipartnership.net. And if you go to rapid response, you'll have this kind of stuff. And so we saw a couple of things. one really interesting thing is what you see there from the left until the big curve is before the release, is that there was a coordinated campaign by a bunch of people, including folks related to Project Veritas, but then also Don Jr., to start to insert the idea of ballot harvesting. So this is for about 5 or 6 days before the release, is that they're pre-seeding the ground for ballot harvesting. And then they explicitly said, we're going to release this on Monday, September 28th, right? All of a sudden then, the New York Times, the blockbuster story of the tax piece comes out on Sunday afternoon. An hour after that, you see tweets from O'Keefe, from a member of the Minnesota Trump campaign, so an official member of the campaign, and Don Jr., hinting now, this is going to come out tonight, right? And then at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, they pop it, and then that's that curve. The size of those shapes is the amount of reach that came from one individual. So if something is like truly viral, what you would see is lots and lots of little dots, right? Lots and lots of little circles. The size of the circle is how much it went from any one account. But that's not what you see so much here. What you see here is a huge amount of reach from the massive, massive circles, right? And so what that demonstrates is that that huge turn up is being driven by a small number of multi-million and 100,000 follower accounts who are actually the ones who are then responsible for the vast majority of the retweets and the interactions after that.
So what I thought about, this is so fascinating, and everyone should go check out this report at eipartnership.net. You can see the actual spread of this ballot harvesting video. But I mean, what I sort of thought about immediately when I saw it was the Access Hollywood tape. And, we now know that, hours or minutes after the Access Hollywood tape was published in 2016, the first, we now know Russia. I mean, the first GRU, WikiLeaks dumps started to happen. And I don't know how to feel. Are you saying that basically that kind of thing, the 2020 version of that is James O'Keefe tipping off Don Jr. that he's going to release this video?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's clear that Don Jr. and other members of the campaign knew that this video was in the hopper because they were previewing it. There's an interesting question of whether...
How do you know they were... because they were
tweeting about ballot harvesting. So no references at all. And then all of a sudden they do it. An interesting point is that Don Jr. does not follow Project Veritas or James O'Keefe, right? And so he did not just retweet. What he did is minutes after it went up, he re-uploaded the video. So we pulled the videos down, and Twitter and Facebook and every site re-encodes videos. There's two good reasons for that. One is the encoding of video on people's phones sucks. And so you end up Facebook doesn't want to have to pay for spinning hard drives to hold poorly encoded videos of everybody's vacation photos for the last 20 years. And so you spend GPU and CPU time up front, and there's a financial trade-off where in the long run it's worth it because you don't have to pay for the electricity for those hard drives over 10 years. But the other is for security reasons, which is there's been a bunch of bugs in video codecs. And so people could try to attack each other by doing a bad video up to Twitter. So when you send a video to Twitter or Facebook, they re-encode it. Facebook drops a bunch of metadata. It turns out Twitter does not. So you can see exactly what went in and when it was re-encoded. And the Donald Trump Jr. and the official posting. So you can see people who retweeted O'Keefe and it came from him. But Don Trump Jr. actually had the video on his phone and re-uploaded it at exactly the same moment. And so there's a couple of ways, but it's pretty clear he knew it was coming. Right. And so, yes, I do think this is pretty much equivalent to the Access Hollywood in that it seems likely the Trump campaign knew this was happening. They started trying to set the stage for people to look on the 28th. It happens at 2 p.m. The New York Times story drops, 2 p.m. Pacific time. And then by 3 p.m., something happens between 2 and 3 p.m. where all of a sudden everybody starts basically saying it's coming tonight instead, right? So there's some kind of discussion between 2 and 3 p.m. of coordination of dropping it. And then it starts to get previewed again, and then they drop it at 6 p.m. Pacific.
Now, so, I mean, for people listening to this at home, there's nothing necessarily this kind of coordination isn't the same thing as meddling with from a foreign actor or anything. But what it seems to really show to me is what you said first, which is this notion of what is going viral and the way that we cover, virality, especially in the press and elevate it and not know that this is basically like programmed. This is like brute forced instead of, anything that's organic. I mean, is that like what you want people to really take away from this, or what is it that you want people to take away when they go through this?
Yeah. So, I mean, Kevin fortunately scrolled to our takeaways. So one is,
see that.
an interesting thing was that platforms acted very differently. So Facebook labeled a single story from Breitbart that said more things and then framed up the video, but they did not label the Don Jr. or O'Keefe or any of those. Twitter did nothing. YouTube did nothing. Our gold standard winner here was TikTok. So we reported it to all these platforms, right? So we basically have all these grad students go out and they find all the references. So I had to go not wake people up. I had to go bug people to get back on Slack on Sunday night. And so we go find all of these. We found that there's fact checks that it's not disinformation unless it's not true. And there's things in the video that turn out not to be true. And reported to all the platforms. And TikTok was the only one that went and then deleted it everywhere, which I found was fascinating.
Why do you think that is? Do you think that's related to the personnel there, or the platform and the China thing, or the fact that they're under such scrutiny right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all of the above. They have, the people who do this is TikTok US. They're in the Bay Area. They're all trust and safety people that used to work at big companies. So there's a set of really legitimate people who care about this, and they are effectively catching up to. It is the same story we see for everybody. Is you get to the hockey stick part of your curve, and then all of a sudden really bad things start happening to people. And you're like, oh, now we should get one of these trust and safety teams, right? This is why I'm teaching a class about this at Stanford of hey, let's do it earlier, right? And so TikTok did that, but they hired really good people, and they're trying very hard. I think explicitly they do not want to be the Facebook of the 2020 election, right? They don't want to be, to be frank, there's a lot of really simplified narratives about what happened in 2016 that I think leave, that are told by the traditional media that also kind of leave out the traditional media's component in what they played. And I think TikTok does not want, it becomes really easy to make it about one company or one platform, and they very much don't want to do that. And since they're not really a platform for political speech, it's easier for them just to wipe stuff first and then deal with it later.
Right. No Trump surrogates are going to get really mad at TikTok because they can't find their O'Keefe video there.
Yeah, people aren't expecting necessarily to be able to repost O'Keefe videos. Right. I think where it gets interesting for them is the stuff that's from there is a subculture of MAGA influencers on TikTok. That are here, I'm doing my fun dance, but I'm doing it in a MAGA hat. Okay, whatever. And then I'm doing a fun dance, and then I throw in some vaccine misinformation or some QAnon stuff, right? That's, I think, harder for them, both technically to go find that content because it is all video and audio, and it's just much harder. But then also to make policy decisions around that, I think is going to be harder.
So how should we, because I know that you, we've talked extensively about the traditional media's role in reporting on this stuff and how to do it responsibly. So when something like the Project Veritas video comes out, is amplified in a coordinated way, doesn't go viral, but definitely reaches a threshold of important people talking about it, and there's a temptation to go out and debunk it. Should we not be debunking it? Should we be talking, how should we as the traditional media be covering it when something like a Project Veritas video that is misleading about something like ballot harvesting? What should we do?
Yeah, I don't have a magic answer here. The Project Veritas was obviously going viral fast enough that it was somebody's responsibility to look into those claims and to say whether they're true or not, right? You don't necessarily even have to, if the things they said were true, it would definitely be a scandal. It turns out that effectively everything Project Veritas says is generally not true, right? But generally if a video comes out like that, I think there's a media responsibility to look into it and to debunk it or to support it. I think because in this case, Veritas is making specific falsifiable claims, right? Where I think the media approach is not smart is around the things that are much less falsifiable about true and false, right? So my big example of this is the Nancy Pelosi slowed down, looks drunk video, right? Which if you look at the kind of the growth graphs on that, the guy that posted that, he's not foreign or whatever. He's just some MAGA guy who runs a page that makes a couple of bucks probably selling hats or whatever. he had like 40 to 50,000 people that interacted with that video before it got picked up and turned into a big controversy. And then you had every blue check mark on Facebook and Twitter, saying, "Oh my God, this video is horrible." You had Pelosi herself come out against the video. I did an interview on MSNBC where I'm talking about how we have to be careful not to amplify this kind of stuff. And then while I'm doing it, they go split screen and they show the video.
Right.
And so I was part of it. And so like, that's the kind of stuff that it's like, it was a parody. There's a bunch of examples of Jimmy Kimmel doing the same thing to Donald Trump. And like, they're not making like an actual claim about Nancy Pelosi. They're making fun of her. And I don't think it's nice, but it's the reality of the kind of political speech we have allowed about our elected leaders for a very long period of time. And it got way more coverage because everybody spent all this time. Look at this thing that I hate. Look at this thing I hate. Look at this thing I hate.
But so is the distinction there then that if it seems like there is, like, Veritas is an organization that is known for this kind of thing, it is a political actor, not,
Right.
an individual, whose intentions might be, unclear, whether it's just like straight up parody or whatever. And so is the idea that you want, traditional media to really be focused on, like, is this a political player, or is this like a very, clear cut, tactic, a piece of disinformation to, sow division or erode trust or confidence or whatever? Like what is the distinction you want to make? Because I know you're describing it well, but it's also like, it does feel fuzzy to me.
Yeah.
In general.
I mean, I guess I want you guys to focus on the fact that becomes amplified, right? So like the piece of disinformation, like the actual media format that it's contained in, is just the initial delivery. What they're trying to deliver, imagine it's like, it's a biological weapon. The first video is the artillery shell full of anthrax, right? But the actual thing that you're trying to stop is the anthrax that spreads from person to person. And so in the Veritas video, they're trying to inject ideas that they want to become part of the conventional wisdom among some group of the population. And so focusing on the fact and whether it's true or not, I think is more important than the content. Whereas like with the Pelosi video, like realistically, nobody's watching that. It's like, they're like, okay, they're making fun of her, whatever. Like they're not trying to inject a real fact.
Right.
Right.
I think an interesting thing that's on the corner case is the whole Biden earpiece thing again, which is one, like, super dumb. Like Kevin pointed out, we have it every time. This was a great example to remind us how horrible Salon is, because like Salon was effectively the Breitbart on the left of the 2004 election.
They literally brought in a NASA physicist to like point out the lumps in George W. Bush's jacket and like take these like grainy like BlackBerry photos and like blow them up to, huge size and like look for it's an amazing piece of like mid 2000s blogging, and I highly encourage you to read it and mock it, because it is a true conspiracy theory.
No, it's like we should print it out and put it in a museum, right? Of like information warfare.
What museum? Oh God.
The museum.
Anyway, like,
the three of us are going to start.
But like the belief that like, Biden cheated somehow, it's like the kind of thing that I think it got overcovered today because it also distracted from the legitimate things that are going to happen today, right? And it dominated the discussion, at least in certain circles of today. And I hate getting led around the nose by this stuff, right? Like, I hate the fact that some crazy person can say one thing and then it completely changes the entire discussion away from the fact that 200,000 Americans have died, perhaps 170, 180,000 of them preventably. That we're probably entering one of the worst recessions in human history, that, 2 weeks ago, it looked like fucking Blade Runner out my window, right? Like, these are the kinds of things that I can't believe we're not. Instead, we spent all day on this Biden earpiece thing. And
so tell us what we should be freaked out about. Like, we have a debate tonight. We're getting, we're 30 some days out from the election. Like, what should we be freaking out about that we are not adequately freaked out about?
Well, I mean, I think what's adequately freaked out, but it's hard because it's watching a slow motion train wreck, is there's a massive attempt to set the stage that the election was stolen, for Trump you're totally right. Like, and what you said, that Facebook executive is the old election administrator's prayer, right? Please let it be a landslide. Please not let it be so close that there's a fight over it. And there's certainly a significant portion of the percentage of the country is ready that if it's at all close, that definitely was stolen. And that is by far, we did a wrap-up post for our first 2 weeks, it is by far almost all the dominant narratives are about election integrity, which is totally different than 2016, right? Where the dominant narratives were all about the opponents and Hillary and her email and stuff. And so now it's about the process. It's not about, the dominant stuff's not about the candidates themselves. The Biden earpiece thing is actually an exception to that.
Where do you fall on the spectrum of
I'll pull this up
worry
just so we can look at it.
and fear about this, and like setting the stakes and priming people to understand what's going on and what's at stake versus the notion that constant alarm, even if it's well intentioned, only serves to make people feel more disillusioned, more unsure, and feel like there's almost no hope that the election is just going to be stolen. I sort of see both those narratives competing for each other, and it's like, where do you fall in that category?
Well, and the best example of that from the left was the USPS thing, right? That like there's legitimate issues with the administration of the Postal Service and of the decisions they're making and how that might affect the election. Also, then people were saying things that were not factually supported. They were attaching photos and videos from years ago of mail being dumped and stuff, or post office boxes being ripped out. And there's some quantitative evidence that shows that like it changed the number of registrations in places like Virginia where people weren't going to vote by mail anymore. If those people don't show up to vote day of, then that could really be considered an effect on the actual outcome. So it's tough. It's easier for me because I speak to an elite audience, right? It's guys like you who are reading eipartnership.net. We're not B2C, we're B2B, right? Like for the media, I think you got to, if you see some kind of narrative getting pushed, you got to hit the narrative and then move on, right? Like the worst thing that happened in 2016 was that the entire narrative for the last month of the campaign was controlled by the GRU leak, and like allowing, and this is not you guys, this is many floors up from you guys in a building in Midtown, right? Where like you can cover something and cover the facts of something and not let it then leak into everything else, right? And I think like the USPS thing, it leaked into everything else. It became
You're talking about the emails and the
in 2016, the emails,
Yeah.
like right, like you can look at the GRU leak set up the Comey set up like the entire discussion of Hillary Clinton's email issues being at the same level of admitted sexual assault, right? For a number of outlets, and I think most editors are not going to be as vulnerable this time, but I think it's the same thing for all this other disinformation that if we somehow have to like get the facts out there and then move on. The other thing I tweeted about today is there's certain pieces of disinformation that are just about the true believers, right? And this is like, I think one of the things that is really interesting is I think media coverage of QAnon is really driving a lot of QAnon now, right? Like, yes, there's stuff that's happening in Facebook groups and such, but it's also, it used to be something that was all about the true believers who needed this like thesis of why their belief in Trump didn't match up with reality. And then it's gone like a whole nother set of legs and driven interest for people to go investigate it. And I think, and it's hard because it's like, it's almost so crazy that it's hard to disprove. Like, are you guys really going to run like a fact check? Hillary Clinton does not harvest the brains of babies. And I feel like that's like a great example that I don't have a good answer yet, but we'll look back years from now of like QAnon was a great example of something that we kind of mishandled collectively.
Oh, see, I totally disagree with that. But Charlie, go ahead. Okay. And then we have another person on the horn. We're going to bring in Times disinformation reporter Davey Alba, our colleague who is here. Davey, welcome to stream.
Hey, Davey.
Hello.
Oh, you're there. Awesome.
Yeah,
I can't believe you guys aren't drinking, by the way. I thought this was the whole point of this was to get ready.
It's
for
only 4 o'clock.
These are my debate chips.
Nice.
It's a long. I have to pace myself.
Seriously, the marathon, not a sprint.
But
so the question on the table, Davey, because I know you couldn't hear us when you were in the waiting room, is whether something like QAnon is an example of something that the mainstream media has sort of fueled by covering, And I want to hear your thoughts on this, because you've been reporting on disinformation for a long time, and I struggle with this a lot, like the line between when are you amplifying versus when are you providing, worthy and valid criticism that's going to, allow someone to send an article to their aunt saying this thing you saw is not true, and here's an article that proves it. So how do you make that call?
I mean, so I haven't been covering disinformation for the longest time. I started like a year ago when I got hired by the Times, and had covered it a little bit when it intersected with my beat on artificial intelligence when I was working for BuzzFeed News. But I will say, in the last year, when I started covering disinformation, QAnon just kept popping up over and over again as a significant community that was sharing this stuff. And the only way that made sense in how to describe this community was to use the word QAnon. So at that point, which was, a year ago, August 2019, this was a community that was already fully formed. And I don't know how we could have discussed that community that was spreading disinformation, misinformation, without referring to QAnon. So I know that doesn't directly answer the question, but I think, in some ways, if we didn't start to cover it, we wouldn't even have the language of how to describe this community at that point. So it was really like, I understand that the media, you can say, talked about QAnon, but I think this was something that was already getting away from us at that point. And I'm just glad that there was a language and a way to describe this community, even though it sounds like kind of crazy when you're just explaining it out of the blue to someone who hasn't heard of it before.
So part of my
I'm
problem,
sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in. Part of my problem with it is I see the point, right? That keeping something like this in the news cycle, like, while it's also working to debunk, there is the possibility that some people are going to see it, find it, get interested in it as a result, maybe go down some rabbit holes because they'll do their own browsing, they'll do their research, right? But I feel like one of the big issues here is the fact that we don't have a way, and it speaks to everything we were talking about earlier too, is we don't really have a way to as the media to just dismiss shit that doesn't that needs to be dismissed, right? There's no way to really do these different gradations where it's Biden earpiece thing, not worth your time, done. Like the way that cable news talks about it, the way that we have to write it in article form or blog post form, and that's a little bit of what we're trying to play around with here, using the medium that a lot of the sort of far right pundits use themselves, is being able to sort of talk informally in that way and sort of dismiss that thing and be like, oh, the Pelosi video, come on, guys, come on. You can't put "come on" in a headline. I mean, you can, but I don't. There's just this idea that it's we're also all so scared of the idea that the one thing you choose not to mention is the thing that metastasizes and plays out in this big way. It becomes, the emails thing of 2020. And I think that it's really hard to calibrate the way that we talk about this in this sort of traditional professional way. That's just why I think it's troubling to deal with QAnon, because some of it is batshit. Some of it is actually, getting people who are tethered to reality and bringing them into this world. So it's you have to, yeah.
Yeah, I will say my thinking on this has changed over the past year. So I went to a Trump rally late last year, and started I was reporting on QAnon, and I was trying to find people who believed in QAnon. And so I was going up to people and saying, hey, do you believe in QAnon, or do you know about QAnon? And some of them were yeah, I love Q. What's up, Q?
I love Q.
And some of them were like, no, what's QAnon? And then I'd have to be like, well, it's a conspiracy theory that says that President Trump is breaking up a global cabal of pedophiles. And they would be like, that sounds awesome. Like, where can I read about it? And I was like, no.
Which they have
no,
a Q clearance, which means they work at a national laboratory on nuclear weapons.
So I was sort of like worried about accidentally red pilling people. But I think in the past year, and Alex, I'd be interested to know what you think about this. Like, I think we sort of have the ability to, because we rank so authoritatively in things like Google search and on social platforms. I was seeing a lot of people sharing like New York Times articles with their friends and family members who believe in stuff like QAnon and saying like, here's a thing that'll teach you why this is wrong. Here's a thing that'll teach you that this, these indictments didn't happen or whatever. So it was a kind of like weaponized debunking that actually seemed to me like pretty useful. Just anecdotally, people would say, I showed your article to my aunt who, was sort of partway down the rabbit hole, and it helped her stay out, or it showed her something. So I'm interested if you think there's sort of a tactical reason to talk about this stuff.
I mean, again, I don't have a good answer. And one of the questions here is like, what is QAnon, right? And it's, in some ways, it's like a religion. I mean, Davey put it right about like, it can start soft. I feel like it's kind of like Scientology, where like the insert is like, oh yeah, people can, have emotional problems. And then like 2 years later, you find out we're all aliens, right? And that QAnon's the same thing of like, child safety is a big deal. And then you take people down this crazy path. So this actually really pisses me off because child safety is a huge thing for me. Like I supervise the child safety team at Facebook. I teach this in a class. I'm writing a textbook with the child safety. I just pulled this off I feel bad. I don't even want to show this because this is going to become a screenshot, but this is on my shelf, right? So like, this is a book on, it was on my,
You're a brave man.
Yeah. It was on my desk when my mom visited, and she's like, what's going on? Well, it's because we're referencing it in our textbook, right? Like we have a whole chapter on child safety. Like there's a lot of bad things that happen to kids online. It's just not like random kids being kidnapped by strangers and then, there's a bunch of all kinds of horrible things that happen to kids because of the internet, and we have to focus on that. Your colleagues, Gabriel Dance and Matt Heller, like wrote a really good series about this. And now I don't even want to talk about it because of QAnon. We actually have a piece coming out from SIO where I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to publish this because QAnon people are going to reference it as like feeding their conspiracy theories. But like, I'm just not going to let the crazy people own it, right? Like white supremacists took over the OK sign. Like I'm not going to let them have all child safety.
But that's the question. How do you let them not own it? That's
right.
Where I think like we're all four of us are like gummed up right now.
So I just want to say, like, there's an interesting thing about QAnon. Like, it's a belief system, but it's also an organization. The people that handle QAnon at Facebook is the dangerous organization team, right? And it's like a really interesting choice for them not to handle it as like hate speech or something, but as dangerous organizations. The person who runs that team, Brian Fishman, wrote a critical article on how ISIS uses social media for the Texas Law Review. I know you guys have all read it because you get your Texas Law Review every week, but it is like the seminal paper on how do terrorists use the internet. And it's fascinating. If you look at like the 7 different functions that ISIS got out of the internet, 4 or 5 of them are relevant to QAnon. And so it's like, in that way, it's kind of like ISIS. They don't have a bunch of Toyota Tundras that they've purchased and turned into technicals, and they don't hold land. And obviously, ISIS is much more violent than QAnon. But you have like this weird situation where ISIS had Telegram, QAnon has 8kun, and then all of these concentric circles, and then the outer concentric circle is Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, where they reach the normies and then pull them in, which is exactly how ISIS worked. It's like how a lot of white supremacists work, that they've got some kind of core communication mechanism by which they organize everything, and then they go and they grab stuff and they pull people in. And so anyway, I'm not totally sure, other than like, I think the companies when the companies think about that, they have to think about the recommendation algorithms totally, especially. And then anything that can be used to find normies and to get them to that first step. Because once people are going to the Q drop sites, they're gone, right? Like that's not fixable, but, really.
So Alex, Q wasn't designated as a dangerous organization until this year, right? And that was part of the struggle for me in thinking about these communities on Facebook, because it is the same communities over and over. When I started writing about disinformation, it's, QAnon communities, anti-vaxxers, deep state believers, all these communities that have a long track record of spreading misinformation, but you can't apply coordinated inauthentic behavior as a label to those communities, because then, like, what differentiates these communities who do share articles online and are very engaged with each other, how do you distinguish them from organizing online?
Right.
And so, QAnon as a community was designated this year as a dangerous organization, but kind of too late, in my opinion. And yeah, I don't know what my point is. I think I'm just spitballing here, but I feel like that is one of the main problems of Facebook is when is the tipping point into dangerous organizations, and when can you take just people acting socially, organizing on Facebook or discussing among themselves as distinct from spreading all of this misinformation, and then that becomes politicized, and it's a whole thing.
Well, it's because they had rules around that, and it's usually tied to organizing of actual violence. And so you have a bunch of like white supremacist, ISIS, obviously, where the people are organizing to like do organized violence. And QAnon's a little different in that they're basically inserting ideas into people's heads that are quite likely to end in Pizzagate-like things, but it's different. I mean, okay, so this is where I start to like differ from a lot of people who work at the Times, is on two things. One, you have to have rules and you have to apply the rules, right? Like, it can't just be Kevin Roose doesn't like something, it has to disappear from Facebook, right? Like, I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but like, it can't just be outcome oriented. If you're going to have a $1 trillion corporation control the speech of billions of people, it has to be rule based, right, and fairly applied. And then the second is, and this especially comes up with QAnon, is there is a trade-off here between safety and privacy. And I feel like there's a lot of words written about privacy, there's a lot of words written about safety, and you guys don't bring those words together too often, right? And like, effectively, to wipe out QAnon would require Facebook to train robots to go look at the private conversation of hundreds of millions of people and then to censor the conversations that they don't like. Now, maybe that's something they should do, but you have to recognize that there's like a serious privacy trade-off there that is somewhat incompatible with everything the New York Times has written in the last 5 years about Facebook and privacy, right? And so, like, I do think there are things they should have done faster around recommendations and such, but when you talk about private groups and the ability of people to choose, I'm going to be in a private group where I want to talk about this crazy idea, it starts to get very tough.
That's where I think like the whole ISIS comparison is just interesting, because like when there's just such a easy bar when you're talking about terroristic content, where it's just like, we're going to go in, this is a national security threat, like we're kicking down the door, like literally, to this private group, and this is a raid, get on the ground, like all like, sorry, you suspended whatever right to privacy you have for participating in this. And like the sort of the genius of QAnon is that it does hide behind a lot of political identities. Now it's hiding behind child safety identities, and that it wraps itself up in this thing and makes those privacy concerns so much more treacherous. Like but at the same time, I hear what you're saying, and I feel very strongly about wanting to protect that privacy thing. I think it is stupid to try to listen in on the conversations of every private group and try to kill this thing. But at the same time, like I don't know, the ISIS comparison it just feels like the great example of platforms really stepping up quickly and decisively and saying this is not allowed on the internet, and boom, it's like they did a great job. Everyone
ISIS was illegal,
job.
Right? That's what made it easy for us. So like when I joined Facebook, ISIS was the number one safety problem. And it was easy because there's a legal definition of what is terroristic content. It is illegal for companies to support them, right? And that has been all litigated. And most importantly is ISIS is an organization that cares a lot about membership, right? So if you're part of ISIS, you say, I'm part of ISIS. And in fact, this is one of Fishman's 7 things, is one of the things terrorist groups want to do is they want to control who gets to say they speak on behalf of the org. That is a complete opposite from QAnon, where nobody speaks for QAnon except this one,
anonymous.
Right. And the people who spread don't like they used to do the hashtag and stuff, and now like overnight they've changed their hashtags, they've changed everything, and so it was very easy to say like if you say you are part of a legally prohibitive group, then we're going to kick you off the platform. The other benefit there was honestly because the U.S. government was arresting and killing ISIS members, so that is. QAnon is not illegal, right? And so like there's a push and pull here where you've got Facebook and Twitter and YouTube kicking ISIS off. At the same time, if you were an ISIS supporter who was doing the propagandizing and you lived in the UK or Germany or something, you get arrested and you go to jail. If you lived in Syria, you get killed, like Junaid Hussain, right? Who, was drone striked for being a propagandist / hacker on behalf of ISIS. Jim Watkins is not going to get drone striked, right? And so like it is, there's like significant differences that I think I'm the one who brought up the parallel. And so I think there's interesting parallels there. And obviously Facebook does, because that's the team that's working it. But there are significant differences that we have to be careful, because I'm not sure I want to live in a world where we can just say like QAnon is illegal, right? Like in the same way that we said ISIS is illegal, because it isn't really a group. It is a belief system. I also just don't think it's practical for us to win this war just by suppression, right?
So we have just a few more minutes here and then we should go. But I wanted to just ask each of you what you're thinking about tonight as we go into the debate. And I think a lot of people are going to be sort of curious what misinformation narratives emerge out of this. There's clearly going to be something, whether it's earpieces or talking points being provided in advance or something else. So what are each of you thinking about and watching for tonight? We'll start with Davey.
Yeah, I just wrote a post that looked at the CrowdTangle data, which is your thing, Kevin, but I borrowed that for tonight.
Never heard of it.
And CrowdTangle
sharing
generated,
logins? Yeah.
CrowdTangle generated this list of top Facebook pages that had the most share of voice about the debate. So they used, pretty generic keywords, just like US 2020 debate, presidential debate, and whatever. And the top public pages that were discussing the debate by most engaged numbers on Facebook overwhelmingly lean right. Number one is, let me just open it up right now, Fox News at 25%, Breitbart 13%, Ben Shapiro 11%, and then we have Joe Biden, MSNBC, whatever, at 7%, and then all the way down at number 33 behind One American News Network and Steven Crowder is the New York Times at 0% share of the conversation.
We're 33. We're 33.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just another, illustration of this thing that you've been trying to get across to all of us in a very smart way, that, the conversation on Facebook, it's like 25%, is the very top, and that's Fox News. So I don't know. It's the same thing that we've seen over and over, and that's likely to hold as the debates get underway.
Alex, what are you thinking about?
I'm going to look to see if in the debate Trump plants any seeds of the election being stolen. So like he does all this stuff on Twitter. It'll be interesting to see if he pulls any of the ballot harvesting or anything else and tries to plant those as seeds, because this will be his biggest audience to do that. The other thing we haven't talked about at all, like the mirror universe that we live in, the director of national intelligence tonight declassified a Russian intelligence estimate that said that Hillary Clinton was framing Trump, right? So like he's literally quoting a Russian intelligence agency of their assessment of what was happening in the 2016 election. So one, pretty sure Hillary Clinton's not running, but I only read the Times, I only read the fake news, so maybe I don't get the real stuff. And second, this is like the essence of elite disinformation, right? Like, I don't know what the tech companies do, what we do in academia, what you guys do in a world where the director of national intelligence is taking Russian disinformation and injecting it into debate night 35 days before the election. I have to kind of drink some more and think about it, because that is crazy. And so it'll be interesting to see the timing of that. If he just injected that today, whether or not, I want to see whether Trump has a bunch of pre-written stuff that he is going to try to dump on Biden that Biden will be able to respond to because he's not looking at the classified information.
Well, what's interesting about that, though, is I mean, this is just my sphere, but I saw that break. I didn't see a ton about it because, again, it's sort of like opposite of the earpiece thing. Like the earpiece thing is just sort of like it fits the super easy to process, very easy to understand, kind of carnival-like atmosphere. Like, you know, like you can run with that and sort of, you know, it's great for cable news programming. It's great for Twitter. This is a lot more sort of advanced. It's a little more wonky. So I think that there are like elements of, you know, where that doesn't spread as much. Personally, I'm sort of going to be taking the earpiece style thing with this. Like, I think that these events tend to be really good for, you know, creating memes, sort of, you know, it's going to be the class, you know, like Sleepy Joe, whatever, you know, I think that there'll be a lot of like, you know, quick commentary, but I don't necessarily know, like, this is one of those things where we're all watching it happen. And it's harder. It'll be spun for sure, but I feel like it's not kind of the thing that we need to pay as much attention to unless there are those very clear, you know, Democrats are going to steal the election. Here we go. And then, you know, Chris Wallace doesn't follow up and sort of push back on that. Like, I don't know. This feels like one of those events where I feel a little more comfortable. There's going to be a lot sort of surrounding as it has today, like, you know, the build up and the lead up into it. But I feel like we're going to just kind of let it happen. People are going to process it. And I think move on to the next sort of nightmare fueled, you know, behind the curtains piece of disinformation. I don't know. Do you guys sort of understand what I'm saying with that? I feel like these are just such like straightforward events and so big in spectacle.
Yeah, but at the same time, debates really generate those moments that get memed, right? Like the sort of Trump creeping behind Hillary, you know, insults that he can make stick about opponents and things like that. And so even though we're all watching it and, you know, are trying to share in one reality, I totally expect some of these moments to just be something we're talking about 6 months from now. Like, oh my God, remember that first debate?
Remember Ken Bone? No.
Oh my God, Ken
We can speak of Ken Bone. That seems like a million years ago. Guys, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Alex.
I was just going to say, it'll be interesting because, like, I feel like the earpiece thing was a massive tactical mistake. Like, if you're going to insert some kind of theory, don't make it something that Biden can go out there and then, like, as a joke, go do something like this or something and turn it, like, into, I don't know. It just seems weird to, like, inject an idea beforehand that is completely trivial for him to dispute up there.
Yeah, it's also the same thing as like the idea that he's like actually functionally brain dead. It's like setting the bar so low that like he strings together like 45, you know, minutes worth of sentences and people are like, okay, well, I don't think he's brain dead. It's like, you know, okay, like there's a real danger to like being so online and hewing so much to your sort of like, you know, like Swiss cheese brained meme crowd that just wants this so bad that like you kind of go too far, and then like the people who you actually need to get out there are like, it was fine.
Yeah. It's the equivalent of like convincing his own people not to vote by mail, right? Like that, we might look back and say that was by far the worst strategic mistake the Trump campaign made, was to choose a direction around election integrity that discourages your voters more than discourages the other side.
We'll see. I'm just in it for the memes. I'm going to set up like a little red feed, blue feed thing on my screen where I have like all the liberal Facebook pages on one side and all the conservative Facebook pages on the other side. See how it goes. Everyone, thank you so much. Alex, Davey, Charlie, thank you all. We will do this again, and time to start really pre-gaming for the debate. Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Be safe. Enjoy it.